Welcome to Design and Engineering Insights. I'm Sarah Jensen, editor of OEM Off Highway, and today I'll be speaking with David Batchelor, President and CBO at Appario, for our annual State of the Industry series to get insight into current trends in the heavy equipment industries. David will be providing his thoughts on the growing potential of artificial intelligence, as well as what challenges and opportunities lie ahead for the heavy equipment industries.
So what potential do we see for the use of artificial intelligence and augmented or virtual reality for the design and manufacture of products as well as within equipment? Speaking specifically to AI, AI has the potential to make decisions for operators, inexperienced operators, the kind of decision that a person could make in 1 or 2 seconds. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Machines are going to get smarter. They're going to be able to make those decisions for operators. The big opportunity there for us as an off-highway community of practice is to use those kinds of AI capabilities, the kinds that are approachable and achievable and implementable today, to reduce the level of competence and training and sort of expertness that is required to perform a number of different operations with different kinds of machinery. If we can make less experienced, less well-trained operators more effective with equipment, almost as effective as expert operators. We bridge that gap some. We can do a great deal as a community to deal with the labor shortage, labor demand, training constraints and pressure that exist in basically every segment of off-highway equipment. It's a challenge in mining, it's a challenge in forestry, it's a challenge in agriculture, it's a challenge in construction. People are looking for really great operators. They don't have enough of them. It's hard to get them. It's hard to train them. AI is going to give us an opportunity to chip at that gap. It is not going to be something where it's going to facilitate autonomous job site operation and federating and platooning a bunch of pieces of equipment together to automatically do work. That future will come, but that future is not this year. It's not next year. It's not this half of this decade. That stuff is out there in ways. And so people shouldn't expect that artificial intelligence is going to start solving those larger problems in a short-term context. The kind of things that I see as being potential for the industry is to use as essentially emerging computer science competency, if you will, of deployable at the edge AI to make it easier for operators to execute jobs and equipment where the training threshold and the experience threshold used to be high, to bring that down so that we can get less well-trained people to work more quickly, more safely, and more effectively than we have in the past. Augmented reality is pretty cool stuff. 15 years ago, when we really started dabbling in augmented reality, nobody knew what we were doing. It didn't make any sense. The augmentation of a real environment was something virtual, or it's sort of like cousin augmented virtuality, which is the augmentation of a virtual environment with something real before you kind of go full VR and there's nothing real left. The augmented reality and augmented virtuality represent opportunities for us as a community, I think, to be more effective in training. They represent opportunities to be more effective in machine design by walking through sort of operator experiences in a virtual environment before we actually manifest a very expensive, early stage prototype machine and show people what that experience is going to look like, tweak some of those things ergonomically from human factors and design perspective early. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in the sales side, getting a prospective customer into a new machine, an emerging machine, a machine that we'd like to sell them, but we don't have on the lot. Those kinds of things, especially in a pandemic economy where sometimes it's hard to get materials, it's hard to get equipment built, it's hard to get equipment out there. These are tools that we as a community have an opportunity to leverage to bring the machine virtually to a customer in a way that lets them make a buying decision about a product or its features and capabilities, and do so in a way that happens like this video conference, in a way where the world is flattened and we take the best use and advantage of the technology that we have. So I think there's going to be some things emerging for us in augmented reality, augmented virtuality, and AI. I think those things are going to sequence in stepwise a little slower than a lot of people would kind of hope and expect. But they're going to build towards something pretty special about 10 years from now. So it's really, taking what technology can give us reliably today, being patient, letting it evolve, but trying to stay on the front end of it the whole ride of this wave, and and surf it towards some real customer value.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
challenges and opportunities. What are the biggest challenges facing the industry currently in the coming years? I think supply chain is a serious problem.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's going to stay a challenge. People, I think there's more hope and optimism about the speed with which the supply chain is going to resolve its current difficulties, especially in the electronics and semiconductor space. And I think it's going to compound in some ways people don't totally expect. So for example, I'm going to pull an automotive example so it's convenient and doesn't kind of offend anybody. But so for example, Ford's got hundreds of thousands of vehicles parked waiting for electronics, and those are model year 21 vehicles. It's a lot of vehicles hanging out waiting for parts. The model year 22 vehicle is going to drop shortly, and they're going to start selling that. Well, now you're going to flood the market with a huge volume of unsold last year's stock. That's going to be kind of interesting. There's never been this kind of dynamic where there's this bubble, this backlog of unsold, unmoved equipment waiting for parts that gets flushed in, basically coincident with the emerging model year, which itself is going to have some supply chain challenges. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that unfolds. And the electronics market is seeing inflationary pressure in price. It's going to be across the board. Many semiconductor manufacturers are increasing the price of their parts by 10% across the board. That will put inflationary pressure on all kinds of electronics, from small sensors, simple products, to very expensive displays. And there's already posture from large tech companies, the Apples of the world and the like, that people can expect their products to grow in price considerably, double-digit percentage points in the next year that these things come out. So we're going to see continued challenged access to parts. We're going to see the price go up, kind of a supply and demand problem where the demand is much greater than the supply. So from an economics perspective, it's obvious to see that prices will rise. And we have this backlog of, previous model year equipment that is going to be struggling to emerge at the same time new model year equipment is struggling to emerge. And so supply chain is going to continue to make things unpredictable. And I think that unpredictability outside of the price increases and all those things, it might be the unpredictability that's the biggest thing the industry's got to deal with, between the Delta and Gamma variants of COVID and the unpredictability of the supply chain. A world that had a lot of cyclicality and predictability and a rhythm to it. That rhythm is gone. It's all discordant and confused now. And I think that that's going to be, a forward going challenge for all of us as an industry. And we're all going to have to try to join hands and collaboratively work through that, over the next couple of years, because it is going to be the kind of thing that's with us in one way, shape, or form for years, not months. Right. 2022 is going to be challenging. 2023, people hope is going to get better, but it's going to have its own, fair share of challenges, all in this pandemic plus supply chain, confusion and unpredictability, and the sort of the potential for a momentary insertion of significant chaos that's just kind of waiting, ready to hit us at any given time. I think opportunities for the industry, it's leveraging the change in the paradigms of this moment, and to do so for things that drive business efficiency, productivity, and gains for all of our end customers. We entered into new business relationships in some cases over the last year and a half, much more quickly, with less sort of travel and pomp and circumstance than we normally would. We over Zoom, GoToMeeting, Google Meet, Teams meetings, found new partners, customers, and, conceived of, invented, and decided to deploy new technologies of real consequence while never really leaving our homes. That kind of thing was unthinkable, 2 years ago. And there's an opportunity there for all of us to, go faster, be more creative, collaborate in new ways, and not fall back into the old patterns or the parts of the old patterns that made us inefficient. So I think there's some real opportunities for us to use this moment to go fast. Speed kills. So we can all drive forward really quickly as an industry if we choose to take advantage of some of the barriers that have come down, because of the ways that we've changed the way that we work, all of us together over the last, couple of years, year and a half. Are there any technology trends that I'm currently excited about in the heavy duty vehicle industry? I think the macro trends, for me are about, on the one hand, data, and on the other hand, energy. I think that data and energy are going to be big macro trends that are going to drive the industry. On the data side, increasingly, I think you're going to see a ubiquitous expectation of connectivity that is going to permeate every part of off equipment machinery. People are going to expect the machinery is connected. They're going to expect the machinery is connected to other machinery. They're going to expect the machinery is connected to its attachments and so on and so forth. They're going to expect that the machinery knows things about its environment and is able to send that data up to the cloud. And they're going to expect that data is going to create business process improvements and education and learning for them. The operator, the manufacturer. So the data, the expectation that all of these things are connected, and the momentum where that trend is permeating, all of our off-highway industries, coupled to data science and a variety of mobile and web kind of software endeavors that are intended to deliver business value from that data. That's going to be a big trend that's going to continue to push the industry. And on the connectivity side of things, coming into like the 2026, 2027 timeframe, we're going to see some really like landmark, exciting new technologies hit the street. CV2X and vehicle-to-vehicle communication based off of like 5G standards is going to become like an approachable, accessible, doable thing. There's some really cool stuff that we as an industry are going to be able to do in the back half of this decade when those things are really approachable and mature, and people have kind of the standards built around them to work off of them. And there's this thing called massive IoT coming, which is going to create the ability to do lower power, longer life cellular devices with ever cheaper data plans for things like, sensors. So it's got a lot of smart job sites, smart, city, smart industry connotation to it. And I think that stuff's going to be really, really neat for us to keep track of. And then energy, the electrification of vehicles, the drive to, get the carbon footprint down for us as an industry. Alternate electric vehicles, hybridized vehicles, alternate forms of fuel, and the vehicular accommodations of those fuels, probably an increasing drive toward, reduction of emissions, at least in the westernized world. I think we're going to continue to see that stuff roll forward, for the years to come. And that both of those like end customer interests have, a back pressure that drives expectations into off-highway equipment that, is going to drive technology growth, investment in ways that I think are going to create, some cool, emerging and interesting customer value. Biggest change, hard to say.
Yeah.
And I think level of change is going to be in the eye of the people that are most directly impacted by the change.
Right.
The operator, between an electric vehicle and an ICE, like an internal combustion engine, if the interfaces are the same and the job is the same and the job is mostly done in the same time frame, maybe plugs the vehicle in instead of gassing it up. The operator, just because the sort of drivetrain of the vehicle changes, might not feel like that's the biggest change. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if you're making inverters and batteries and, electric motors, you're the vehicle manufacturer and you're incorporating all that stuff in the vehicle, that's a huge change, for you. So depending on whose seat you sit in, your perspective on the volume of change for any one of these really significant initiatives, I think it's gonna be significantly impacted by your perspective. So I think at the end of the day, the macro drivers coming back to, how do we get a workforce that can execute? There's changing expectations for the workforce. There's, labor shortages and demands that are challenging to deal with. I think ways that we accommodate the evolving workforce are going to be, and the sort of regulation in the industry is going to be probably at the end of the day some of the larger areas of focus that'll drive the vehicle changes to try to accommodate the macro picture needs that we're trying to serve.